Today is June 16th, 2018, and I am talking with Dan Mihuta. Dan, thank you so much for taking time to speak with me.
Yes.
And Dan is talking to us from his home in Ohio. Have you always been in Ohio, Dan?
Yes. This Lorain, Ohio is my home, and live in Cleveland, Ohio now.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your childhood and growing up.
Well, living in Lorain, Ohio, born in 1923, I'm the first son of immigrant parents. My father and mother both came from Austria-Hungary. My father is Romanian, and my mother is Hungarian. They did not come together. They met here and married. And I have a brother, Bob.
Okay.
And so we were raised in the Lorain City Schools, but both my brother and I then graduated a little later on at Amherst High School, a suburb of Lorain. And we were educated in that area. From that particular time after we graduated from high school, of course, 1941 is when I graduated. I worked in the shipyards of Lorain and was then drafted into the United States Army. And my brother was also. And the schools in Lorain that I went to as an elementary child was a three-story building which is determined to be unsafe, and we knew eventually it was going to be torn down. We were told even as children one day this school will have to come down because we're going to have to build schools on a one level because of fires.
Okay.
I think there was a tremendous fire that occurred in Cleveland. And anyway, but it was during my elementary years when I was in about the fourth grade, fifth grade, that my mother caught tuberculosis. We lived right next door to the National Tube Company, which was a steel company that manufactured pipe for businesses and so forth. And she caught the tuberculosis, and then she left us for 3 years and went to a sanitarium for cure, and we were brought up by my father, who acted as our mother and father. And then he moved closer to Amherst, of course, because he wanted to be closer to where my mother was. The sanitarium was located in Amherst. And so that took care of our lower elementary area. But the one thing I can remember best about the elementary school, I never knew that there was a depression going on. It seemed like everybody, when my mother was gone, everybody seemed to take care of us as children and fed us and clothed us, and the teachers took care of us pretty well. So it was a happy childhood.
And you did mention 1923 is the year you're born. You were born March 20th, 1923, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned growing up in the Great Depression. My grandfather, he remembers berry picking during the Great Depression. He worked picking berries up here in North Dakota, and he remembers going out on the flatbed wagons early in the morning and picking berries.
You bet. My father was in a steel mill, was a crane operator, and he moves pipe around in the mill. But I remember him having some days where he only worked one day at the job. If he got 2 days and he found another family that needed more work, he'd give one of his days away to share the depression. But like I say, as children, my brother and I really didn't know there was a depression going on. Dad took care of us pretty well.
Well, that sounds really great. And you mentioned that after you got out of high school and everything, you were drafted. I understand that you are a World War II veteran, since I did find your interview that you gave back in 2002 with the Veterans History Project, and you spoke about your service. Can you just briefly talk about your World War II service, since you did mention it?
Yeah, there's one thing about it. After I was drafted and went to California for the training and so forth, we were first scheduled as my outfit was called the 492nd Port Battalion, Company B. The outfit was split up into 250 men per unit, A, B, C, D companies, and our job was in California to be trained how to load ammunition in Benicia, California, which was a kind of storage area for ammunition. But then we got sent overseas, and we went directly to Guadalcanal, and the island was still active because we got a Bronze Star for that. But the thing is, my particular duty in the Army, gaining a sergeant's rating, was basically getting the map whenever ships came from the United States to Guadalcanal to look at the cargo that was aboard the ship and decide on the number of men needed to unload. It could be food, canned food, it could be clothing, it could be trucks. We unloaded aircraft carriers. Even once in a while, aircraft carrier would take planes off. So that was my particular job. Later on, when we were about to leave the island, I was put in charge of training Gilbert and Ellis Island natives to teach them how to load and unload ships. So in case there was more duties to be done after we came home or moved up the line, because we went next to the Philippines, Cebu City in the Philippine Islands. So I was put in charge of working with the Gilbert and Ellis Island natives, which was a very interesting thing. I had 12 men who worked for me in regard to that. But the one thing that happened there that probably I didn't mention before, we were loading supplies from the Guadalcanal area to send up further up the line. The war had already now, according to the island of Guadalcanal, was declared now safe. Prior to this time, we had no lights on the island at sunset, but now we were declared safe, and so we were starting to use lights. And it was about a few months after that we were loading a ship with aerial depth charges, which go off on contact. And I had worked that ship till about 4 o'clock that afternoon and closed the ship, came aboard shore. And then they found some more bombs. So the second group of my men went out to finish up the loading. And we had 52 from my company, plus the people on the ship, which were sailors and merchant marine and all the thing. A total of 250 men. The ship blew up. We never knew whether a bomb went off or whether the Japanese torpedoed it. Japan claimed they torpedoed it, but we say we never knew. Everyone was lost except for one person who was picked up as a dead body. They only found 23 parts of bodies out of 250 men. And the tomb in National Cemetery in Washington is the largest tomb in a cemetery, which houses all the names of all the men who were killed on that ship. The ship was called the USS Serpens. Not serpent, but serpens. Anyway, that was one of my early escapes of having been lost at war.
That's horrible that situation happened. And you did say you were in the U.S. Army, and you said your rank was sergeant.
Yes.
Okay.
I was a buck sergeant. Mm-hmm.
And you said you were overseas. How long were you overseas for total?
Except for about 9 months I'd say it was 2 years and 3 months or so, like that. Yeah, a little bit more than 2 years.
Okay. And I just don't want you to repeat yourself, since there is an interview that's in the Library of Congress about you speaking about your
Yeah,
your service and everything. So I just
yeah,
wanted to briefly
yeah,
touch on it, but that was
yeah.
it's appreciated that you gave some more information. I think there's some information there that's pretty
Well,
interesting.
the one thing I'm proud of, and I wish I had done more, when we got back home, one of my buddies and I visited one family right away that we were real close, who was in our tent, visited their parents from West Virginia. He was their only son, a 6'4" tall boy who was their championship basketball player, and that was the only boy lost out of their town. So we visited his folks, and I ended up visiting two more parents who lost children in the war. And that was a satisfying experience. I wish I had done more of that.
That's very touching, and that's nice to hear. I mean, even though it's a horrible situation, I mean, they must have been very appreciative about that.
Yes, and it's interesting. No matter how they were told, they knew their sons were not in battle, but they first got a notice missing in action, and then the second notice came a few weeks later, killed in action. And they could never understand how could that happen when they were not in actually a fighting situation. And then they were informed by the Army with a visitation. But when we visited them, each one of them, the question they most asked for is, he still alive? Could there possibly be the fact that he's still alive? And of course, there was none. But the parents so want their body back.
Of course.
If it's possible.
Sure. And you said that you visited them. Is that right after the war ended, or is that after a little bit?
I started in the college first, so it was during the time I was in college. I'd say within the year, when we had some time off, that some of the buddies got together to visit parents. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll bring me to the next topic. You said after the war ended and after you got out of the military, when you came back home, what did you end up doing?
My brother got back from Germany, where he was in the service, and the thing is, he already was at Baldwin Wallace College, and he had me already enrolled at Baldwin Wallace College, so that when I got home in February, it was February of 1946, that I only had a few weeks at home, and the next semester started at Baldwin Wallace, so I went right into college on a GI Bill. So my brother and I were both at Baldwin Wallace College in Berea, Ohio, which is right next door to where we live right now. So we started our college education, and it was a very successful and very good. I got through in about 3.5 years because they remained on what they call the military accelerated program. You could take more courses than was necessary to graduate in 4 years, and I did that in the next 3.5 years, graduating in 1949 with my brother.
Okay. What did you study while you were there?
My major was psychology, and the reason why I chose psychology is after we were on Guadalcanal, we got shipped to the Philippine Islands for about 5 or 6 months, and our job there was unloading food and equipment for the Filipino people. Most of the Filipino people got caught in the middle of the war, first with the Japanese coming down and we going back to take the island back. And the thing is, they were living in the mountains, and most of them were starving to death. And so it was a part of our government's job to get as much food to them as they could, rice, and got them a lot of sewing machines and different things that they could make a living at and so forth. So that happened in between the time. But when we got that done, we got, like I say, got on home. I remember the kind of funny thing that when we had standing by the gangplank, we didn't want anyone to break into any of the bags of rice. But a lot of these fellows who were working, the Filipinos, would load their pockets up in their shoes or something with rice, their hats. And as they were getting off the ship, we'd lift their hat up and the rice come pouring out of their hat. It was a kind of a funny situation.
I'm sure
Anyway.
they're probably walking away and they had just a trail of rice behind them.
Yeah, they had a trail right behind of rice. But anyway,
okay.
That was the proper thing our government was doing for the Filipino people at that time.
Okay.
And so, but the thing is, when you'd go to your meal in the Philippine Islands, all of a sudden the people were coming down from the mountains with children. They would somewhere find some sort of container, tin can or something, and as you went to your meal, there'd be a line of 100 kids outside waiting for your garbage. If you didn't eat everything, you'd walk out and they'd say, pour it in here. We pour our extra food into their cans so they could eat. That really got to me, and I decided that when I got back to college, I was going to study psychology, sociology. I want to work with people somehow to see if I can make the situation better somehow. So that's what I chose for my major at BW. But as I was in school, my interests varied all kind of ways. I found great interest in science, general science, and I thought that was something I would like to teach. And then I had a natural art ability from elementary school. That's one thing I ought to mention about elementary school.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school, I was in about the 4th grade. A teacher, I had a Mr. Parks who came as a traveling art teacher, and he had me and another boy picked out as his top artists. It was a very natural thing for me to be an artist. And the teacher had given me the chalkboard at the end of the room, said, here's the chalk and here's your board. That board's yours forever. Anytime you want to draw a new picture on it or do something, that's your board. So I was granted early right to become an artist. So it was always a natural thing for me as I was growing up to do art, draw something, paint a sign, make some lettering, make a sign, whatever it might be. So I was using art as a kind of a hobby, but I was doing a lot of art for the college. The professors would need something, and they'd say, hey, go see Danny. He'll make you a sign or he'll do something. So when I went out to get the job, one of the men who was a professor at the college said, he was now superintendent of Medina County Schools. He says, hey, no, I want you as an art teacher. You did all kind of art for me. I want you as an art teacher. I don't want you teaching anything else. I'll give you $2,000 a year and $200 extra for gasoline mileage. I'm going to send you around the county. You be an art teacher. So that's how I entered the field of art, and I've never been sorry about that because that's really where I belonged. It was a very natural ability that I had.
Okay, well, you just answered my next question. I was just about to ask, how did the art instruction come into the picture?
Yeah, it was a real natural thing. In fact, an interesting fact, while I was on Guadalcanal, I was going to bed, and one of the guys came in my tent after working a ship. He says, hey, Danny, there's a guy on that ship out there. He can take off tomorrow morning. He says he's from Lorain, Ohio, like you. He said he was an art teacher. I said, what's his name? He didn't tell me his name. So I quickly got out of bed and got into a boat. One of the Coast Guards took me out of the boat, and here was my art teacher. And I met him aboard. He was a purser aboard the ship that came to Guadalcanal. So I met my art teacher. It's very interesting.
Small world.
But the thing is, that was so fortunate a thing. But the thing is, there's no question that when I started to do the art, I didn't have it as a study as a major. So all the time I was teaching art after I was hired, I took courses back again at BW. I went to Cleveland Institute of Art, Cooper School of Art for commercial art. I went to Case Western Reserve for art, Cleveland Art Institute. Every place I could take art, I took art where I got credit for it till I worked up my major in art. And I took art kind of like a piecemeal type of thing, but a very, very wanting one. I filled every need I wanted to fill. Even went to Ohio State. Yes, Ohio State too.
Okay. So even after college, because you did study psychology, you said, so when you graduated in 1949, you just went into art.
Yes, and of course, when you're working with children in schools, the psychology didn't go to waste. You use your psychology a lot with kids.
Sure. And I did find some information because you said because you went into art and you started teaching art. I did find some newspaper articles from the Medina County Gazette, and one was from 1951, and it listed you Dan Mihuta, County Art Supervisor.
Yeah, that was right.
And then a little bit later on in the Daily Reporter in Dover, Ohio, from 1967, it was a little bit more information. Dan T. Mihuta, Art Coordinator for Parma City Schools.
Yes. I was, there was two, I was the one in charge of elementary coordination. There was one for high school. Yeah, but I was doing that. And then while I was at Parma, our superintendent decided to go into television. And in doing so, Dr. Briggs, picked out a whole group of people because he was going to be one of 3 stations in America that was going to have a broadcasting station instead of just using TV as an intercom type of an arrangement. And so my programs that I did in Parma, I got pulled out of the classroom, and I started to do TV because I was the art director. I would do the scenery and the sets and all that. And that's what he wanted me. He says, and also you sing in a barbershop quartet, so we need some showmanship too.
Okay.
So the thing is, he said, you're our man.
Okay.
So I did. I made about 150 programs or so for the Parma schools on television.
Okay. And before we go any further, you said that you were teaching art and everything in Parma and in Medina. Did you go to a few different schools? Did you teach at different areas in Ohio?
Not just in northern Ohio. In Cuyahoga County, where Parma was, and Medina County, which was below us. That was a county system where I went to different schools because they didn't have one teacher for any one school. The schools were all too small individually to have an art teacher, so I went to about 5 different schools during the week.
Okay. And did you just teach children, or did you teach any older children or older teenagers?
It was kind of funny. In the county system, I taught all the grades.
Okay.
When I'd go into the school, I'd go kindergarten right through high school, teach every grade. And I did that in Parma for a while as well, too. They put me on some classes to teach commercial art because I could letter, and they wanted somebody who could teach lettering and photography and so forth. So I did that at Parma, too. But basically, my full intention was always to be with teaching elementary children because I like the technique of teaching kids how to use materials. The subject matter, I wanted to be their own. I would help them with anything they would need to draw, but I wanted them to know what to do with finger painting, what to do with watercolor, what to do with chalk, what to do with clay, what to do with wire or metal, anything material-wise. Teach them the technique of material, and then now let's express it in art the best way you can. And that was so engaging for me. I loved it.
All mediums. That's great.
All mediums, every medium. And in fact, if you want to hear one, some people still don't believe that I did it. For third and fourth graders, I taught silk screen painting, using silk screen to paint. That's a commercial type of technique used by giant stores to print signs for their windows and so forth. It's a special technique, but I could teach it with a crochet hoop and some silk and some paint, and I could do it.
That was one thing, me personally, I've been interested in silk screening since I was in high school, and we never were able to do it. Even when I was in college, we never had any access to silk screening, so it was amazing for me to find out that eventually, for one of the TV series episodes, you did do a silk screening episode.
Yes, I think I have one in there.
Before we go any further, you did mention that in Parma, Ohio, they did have the closed circuit educational television system. Yes. And a funny, interesting thing that I found is that in 1963, the FCC established the new class of station, instructional television fixed service, and Parma, Ohio, and Mineola in New York were the first two school districts that were licensed stations in late 1964.
Yes. I didn't know. All I know is that when I broadcast, Purdue University came out and put a tower on our property, which allowed our signal, once we broadcast it, to broadcast as far west as Sandusky, Ohio, almost to the Pennsylvania border. And so when I did my programs, there was a vast number of people receiving my programs other than just my own school system. And the people who appreciated that the most were the parochial schools, the Catholic and Lutheran schools, because they were able to pick the programs up too.
Okay. And then this is a good 20, almost 30 years before you would do the other series that we'll talk about fairly shortly. But were they sort of the same idea, just to show how to do the art projects and then just show them in the classrooms, or would you broadcast live or anything like that?
Well, I was always on live. I could design my own lessons. I designed my own sets. And the thing is, I would never see the results once they went out over the air.
Okay.
I did judge some shows where I saw my work show up with the kids, but my intention was for them always to be imaginative and be on their own, go beyond the normal. Don't be afraid to exaggerate your art. Don't be afraid to change colors way beyond what is natural. Use a new technique. And there was no such thing as a failure for you. Just remember that when Edison was trying to build a light bulb, someone asked him, how come you're not discouraged after having 1,000 light bulbs that don't work? He says, I'm not discouraged at all. I just found out 1,000 things that don't work.
Exactly.
So the thing is, whenever someone is doing art or anything, if it doesn't work, mark it down as one of the experiences that you can mark off.
Exactly.
On the side, you always can succeed. Yeah.
If you don't try, you never learn.
That's right.
Exactly. And I did find, obviously doing research the last few years and everything, I did find one quotation here that I just want to read before we go further. And it said, for much of the 1970s, art instructor Dan Mihuta was giving lessons on the closed-circuit school television system at Parma, Ohio. His lessons caught the attention of Donna Matson, president of Western Instructional Television. The result was The Art Chest, the first of 3 art instructional series Mihuta produced for nationwide audiences.
Okay, I have to correct that just a little bit. The first set of programs I made in Parma were in black and white. And when all of a sudden color came in, our superintendent went out and got some colored cameras. And he said, at this point, we're going to broadcast in color from this moment on, which meant my black and white programs could not be shown.
Okay.
As it was a decision of his. So, our guy who ran our TV station looked around as to where we can get some art programs in color, and he found down at Matson's studio in California, and bought 2 series on drawing from Donna Matson. They were done by another artist, and I can't recall his name at the moment. And that year, I did not do that series. I prepared a bunch of other things I was doing, but I knew that Donna Matson was going to be in Washington, D.C. for a conference, and my director was supposed to go to that conference because he had purchased some of her programs. And the thing is, he said, I don't want to go. I said, well, would you send me? Let me go? He said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll get the time off for you, but you got to pay your own way. So I went to Bethesda, Maryland for the conference, and I crashed her party, and I was Mr. Bailey. That was my boss's name. And she came up to me and she said, I don't think I know you. I said, no, but you soon will. She said, why? I said, I'm going to make programs for you. She says, what do you teach? I said, I teach art. Oh, she said, oh, you're the group that bought some of my art programs. Well, why would I want to buy more art programs? I said, because I teach elementary children. And I said, these are upper elementary, and you need to get down, and I can teach elementary children. Oh, she said, okay, whenever you're out in California sometime, bring a couple of your tapes and show me what you do, and I'll have a look. Well, this was the convention in Bethesda came sometime in March, maybe. Anyway, our spring vacation was coming up, so I quickly had the engineers tape off a few of my programs where I did the sets and the visuals in my lessons. And I took a plane and headed for California, and I went into her office in California, in Hollywood. And she said, what are you doing out here? I said, well, you told me to come out whenever She said, well, it isn't summertime yet. I thought you were going to come in the summer. I said, no, I got to get working on the programs right away. So she looked at the programs, and she watched for about 5 minutes. She closed the TV set out. She says, let me tell you how I hire people. You make the programs, and we use them. I sell them. You get 10% of the gross sales. And that's the way it works.
Okay.
Are you satisfied with that? I said, I'm satisfied as long as I'm teaching children who don't get art. I knew that North Dakota, South Dakota, there were so many, Mississippi, Georgia, down in the South, many people were not getting art. As if I can get on TV and teach kids who don't have an art teacher to art, that's what I want to do. So I went back out that following summer and made 3 sample shows. She says, you're hired, man. And from that point on, I work with Donna Matson.
So the very first time that you two met, you were very clear on what you wanted to do, and you were talking to the person that would help you do it.
Absolutely clear. In fact, she said to me when she first met me, well, I got 3 buses out there to take people to see the different monuments. Are you any kind of a guy who knows how to sing? I said, I sing in a barbershop quartet. She said, okay, I assign you to one of the buses. One of the buses that are going between the monuments, you have the people on your bus sing. You got me, all right. So she had me 2 ways. She had me as an art teacher and as
an
a
entertainer.
group leader, singer.
Great.
We got along real well all the years.
That's just wonderful. And thanks for clearing that up for me because, like I said, there's not a whole lot of information out here. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm
Yeah.
talking to you today. And I really want to clear some of this up here.
Yeah.
So,
And I always like the fact that when someone asks me about how did I meet Donna, I said, I crashed one of her parties. Because that's actually, I tell kids to do that when I was teaching school. When these kids say, how come you became, I says, listen, if you want to do something and you think it's right and it's something you must do, do it. As long as it's not going to hurt anybody, do it. If you did wrong, they'll tell you did something wrong and you shouldn't do it again. But don't stop yourself from not doing something because you pre-think it out ahead of time. Do it. And that's what I did.
And if you're anything like me, if you don't take that chance, you're going to regret it. Believe me.
You're going to regret it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You got to take the chance, and I won, and a lot of other people win by doing that. Only you're not harming anybody.
So we skipped over about 20 years from the time that we talked about when you were first doing the television back in Ohio, and then up to the point where you ended up meeting Donna and talking about doing a series for her. That was so when you met Donna, that was in the 1970s?
I think I met her in about 1978.
Okay.
And I made the first show for her, Art Chess, in 1980.
Correct. So the first series, the Art Chest in 1980, and there were three separate series. The Art Chest was 1980, The Art Maker was 1983, and Return of the Art Maker was 1986.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, those are correct.
And I remember the Art Chest above all three. I'm not too sure if because the station up here, KFME, Channel 13, if they had that series prioritized or anything like that. But I do remember that one. As far as the first series, the Art Chest, while we're on that subject, where was that filmed?
I filmed that. The first trial programs was at Merv Griffin's stage. Merv Griffin used to do his shows on Hollywood and Vine, and he would film his programs, 2 programs on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, and 1 on Wednesday. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was open for rental. And so we did the first shows there. And then we went to the Gong Show stage, where they filmed the Gong Show in the Columbia Studios and filmed the rest of the Art Chest there.
Okay.
Then finally, she found a studio somewhere else that was in a garage, very adequate, that made commercials, and we used that for the other 2 series. But they were always rental studios and a rental control room that come in with a bus. They had all the gear, sound equipment, and so forth. And it worked out perfectly fine. And then she had my wife and me out many times after that, when the shows were running. She had a house in the desert, and she'd bring us out and say, here's my house, use it for as long as you want.
Okay.
So she was very good to us.
That's just awesome. That's just wonderful that she was able to do that and everything.
Yes.
As far as another thing you mentioned, so the production was in Los Angeles, and the one thing about the Art Chest that stands out from the other 2 that I noticed, just from what I've been able to find and what I remembered, is the first series. You're in a room and it's a brick wall background instead of the open studio setting like the others.
Yeah, like the first 3 that were on the Merv Griffin stage, I don't remember what the background was. I think on the rest of the ones of the Art Chest, wasn't there a large door behind me?
I believe the Art Chest, it was a brick wall and it seemed like a big sort of iron door, and then there was the desk.
Okay, yeah.
And then the other 2, the Art Maker, you had the art on the walls, and then
sign on the wall.
And then the Return of the Art Maker, from what I was able to find, is just sort of a bigger. The second 2 series is obviously it looked like there was a lot more empty space.
Yeah, that was true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Art Chest was named by her. When I went out for the first set, she had already decided on the name of the show, and she had purchased the art chest so I could take my lessons out of the art chest before each program. That was her idea, and a good idea.
And that was actually my next question, actually, was the art chest itself, because I always thought the art treasure chest prop was just so cool to me when I was younger.
Yeah.
So she
that art chest. Yeah.
So she bought that.
She bought that, and that was part of the thing. And you know, I was not allowed to touch that other than open it.
Really?
The union was so strong in California. I went to move it on stage on the very first show that I made, and everybody yelled, "No!" I wondered what was wrong. And the union was watching. Let's make the first show. There were men there who belonged to the union. If you had to move a mic or move a chair or do anything, it was all done by union people, and I wasn't supposed to touch anything except open it up to take the lesson out. Always admired the art chest. So about 5 years ago, for a Christmas present, he had written in school why he liked Grandpa's shows, and he talked about the art chest. So Donna, when the programs had closed off, sent me the art chest, and I gave that to my grandson for a Christmas present.
Really? I was just about to ask whatever happened to that, if she ended up buying it.
No, it came. She sent it to me, and I had it at the house for a year, and then I gave it to my grandson, so he has it in his house. And he, like I say, he wrote a piece for his teacher about how much he loved the art chest, and I gave it to him. Everybody was jealous about who was going to get it, but he's now a policeman now down in Savannah, Georgia, but it's in his house.
Oh, that's great. One of the first phone calls that I made to you told me that the episode guide, as far as the 3 series, there were 32 episodes in each series, and
yes,
and they're 15 minutes long.
Yes.
Like you mentioned earlier, the variety of different projects and everything, and especially the ones that I remember, is not just drawing and painting, but also sculpting with clay and bookmaking.
No, do you not have those sheets that go along with that?
I actually was able to find the episodes through looking. I believe that the educational programming service for the stations here in town offer those to elementary school teachers to rent, I believe, and that's what I was able to find the episodes for those.
Well, I could send you, I think I've got a few sheets left of each of the promotional sheets that she used to send out with all the programs listed on the back side of the program with all the different lessons that I taught.
Oh, sure. If you'd be willing to do that, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
just make sure I've got your address correct.
Oh, sure. We can talk about it at the end of the
Okay.
During the show's run and the production, what did you do to promote the shows? I mean, obviously making them, but as far as after.
I never. All I know is Donna took me around to all the conventions that we had, which they call First View. Twice a year, there'd be 2 major programs held, but the First View, people would go to all the people who were in public television, colleges, high schools, anybody interested in educational TV. They would be told where the convention was going to be located. They came with 2 purposes. One, to show off anything they made themselves. They would announce ahead of time, I'd like to show a program that I made on turtles. And then what you want to show on how to do certain kind of flower growth or something. So they would announce ahead of time, and they were put into a schedule so they could show what they had so the viewers could decide whether they wanted to buy them to show at their local PBS station or high school. And then the other people that went were the ones who, it would be a case of going to it, listening to what other people want made. We sure could use a program in this, we sure could use a program then. and the producers of television would then go back home and make programs to fill those needs. So First View was one of those programs that I met Donna at.
Okay, so sort of a made-to-order sort of thing.
And it worked out real well in presenting your programs, and people would buy your programs right there on the spot. Donna would sell a 1-year lease on it, 3 years, and a 5-year lease, depending on the price you wanted to pay and how long you wanted to have it. So that First View is So the thing is, the program sales, other than that, was done through the mail by Donna herself.
Okay. And you did mention that you did teach some seminars and gave some teacher clinics, and this is even going back to before the series.
Oh, golly. I'm over 200 maybe programs all around the country. I loved doing the Indian reservations. Denihatsu in Arizona, Peach Springs. There was an Indian reservation in New York State. The PBS station would bring me into a state, and the TV advisor in that state would take me around to the different schools where they wanted me to teach a program that day and meet the kids and talk to them and teach us right on the spot. So I'd carry my supplies with me.
And you did mention...
So I did an awful lot of that.
And you did mention previously that you did do some of the favorites that you remembered. You said you remembered ones that were in Florida, in Arizona, specifically Phoenix, and then you did mention that you did come to Fargo, North Dakota, some years back.
Yeah, I got to Fargo. The kids made a TV, and they sent me a picture of them enjoying my program there. Yes. So we went up. I happened to be in that area, so I went up there and visited the classroom with the kids. Yeah,
I'm sure they loved that.
You know, Donna was always afraid of that for herself because she made programs too, but she was always afraid of it, and I never was. But I could understand why. When I made the programs in 1980 as an art chest, and if I visited a class in 1995, 15 years later, where the kids might still be around, well, that's a little bit too long, but anyway, I would show up, and the kids would show a surprise on their face because they remembered a much younger Dan Mihuta.
Okay.
After they got over the initial fright or disappointment, if it might be, whatever it might be, that didn't bother me. I was meeting them face to face, and we were going to be friends.
Sure.
But the thing is, Donna, as a woman, was always concerned. She never wanted to go out afterwards making a program. She wanted to remain young in their eyes. But that didn't bother me.
Okay. And you mentioned so long after, obviously, because the last series, The Return of the Art Maker, was 1986, and I remember watching Return of the Art Maker and The Art Chest, and I believe The Art Maker too, but I just don't really remember specific projects. But this would have been in the mid-1990s, so right around the same time. So
yeah,
and I remember that.
The least popular of them was The Return of the Art Maker, and when she and I decided to do it, she said, "Do you want to do this?" I said, "Yes, I've got more programs. I have a program after that." But the thing is, for most of school systems who were buying programs to show to their children in school, they could buy one art chest or one art maker, and maybe sometimes they would splurge and go to two, but they certainly wouldn't go to three.
Okay.
So it was a very selective program. There were people who bought all three.
I see. Okay, and I do remember one of the things I did love about the series and the art chest too is I just loved the theme song or the intro with the piano and the whistling. Yes. It's like I still to this day I remember that.
And if for the truth of the matter over here is a lot of kids when I'd go to a classroom visiting in some state, Oklahoma or something. And I'd walk in, they say, "Hey, whistle your theme song." Well, I could whistle, There's no question about it. But that whistling was done on a recording that was made in England. And it was already canned music that Donna bought
Sure.
for the show.
Production
And so
music.
I'd pretend I was whistling when the show started, and it looked like I was doing the whistling, but that's one way to kind of warm yourself for the program. Yeah.
Sure. And the production music, I'm no stranger to that. When I was in school, we used to have to find free use music and that sort of thing. And so that was from England, really. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Going over the years and obviously teaching the seminars and the clinics and traveling to all the states that you mentioned and doing that. After the last television series was completed, so this would have been 1986, you were obviously still...
I went on until 2004, when I think Donna started to pull the programs off because she was going to close down after that.
Actually, I believe the last year I saw the art chest on TV here, if I remember right.
About 2004?
Correct.
Yeah, that's about the time when she started to not promote it anymore. She was just taking reorders from different people.
And sure, and by then, I mean, obviously, because it had been some time since you did the series, the first one and the last one, so that's one thing too. Obviously, some programs they're very dated, but the content is still very strong.
The content was there, and I made so sure as I made them that I didn't date any programs by date. I tried to make sure that they were going. Flowers will always be flowers. Clouds will always be clouds. So I may have dated some old cars or something to make them, but I made them. I used my imagination to make them applicable as an imagination project rather than being real.
So after the series was completed, so 2004, you were still obviously...
I still was going out and giving workshops. People were still calling me up to go out. I was doing a lot of schools, the Christian schools that were not in public schools. I was being called by them. I was being called by senior groups. A lot of libraries around the country would call me in to give a workshop for their library. So I kept working in various kinds of ways with that. But then back here at home, I was pretty busy with my barbershop quartet in all cases and with the Kiwanis Club. So I had that going all the time, too. So my time was always filled with activity.
Okay, and that's a perfect segue into our next topic is your hobbies and your interests. And you did mention barbershop quartet to me several times previously.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
Yeah, I joined that in 1950 when I first started to teach. I got in the barbershop society, and I'm in it now. And what am I having? I'm having 68 years. And my membership is 68 years old now in barbershop. Singing 6 different quartets. 2 of them won championships in the northern Ohio area. And we did a lot of work in hospitals and rest homes and some for paid jobs, a lot of paid jobs for different chapters that wanted to put a show on.
Sure.
So that's been a great, great fun. So we've had that. Then, of course, Kiwanis. I was always a sign painter. All the time I was in the Army, at college, I was always doing sign work for everybody, putting pictures on it. So Kiwanis picked me up because they needed signs work, and I joined Kiwanis. I always did art and sign work for Kiwanis, plus all the other things that go along with Kiwanis.
Okay. And that's the Kiwanis of Middleburg Heights, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you were involved with them fairly early or some time ago?
Yeah, I've been in it 52 years. 1966
okay.
is when I joined them.
All right. And then back to the barbershop quartet. I was able to find some information about those. You did mention 2 championships. While you were a member of 2 different quartets, both were Johnny Appleseed District Quartet champions. The Hi-Fi 4 in 1957 and the postgrads in 1962.
Yes, that's true.
And in 1962, I did find through the magazine on Barbershop Quartet, the Harmonizer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they had some photographs of the different groups. And in 1962,
Yes.
High Five 4 was still a group. Were you in both at the same time?
No, in 1962, High Five 4 had gone down already.
Okay.
In 19 when I was in the postgrad, and by the way, that was all school teachers. I was singing in another quartet called Rounding Third and Heading Home, I think. There's strange names over here, but there were times when all of a sudden somebody wanted you as their bass or something, so you suddenly were in two quartets when some people were dying to be in just one quartet. If you had a voice, they wanted you. So
Sure. And you did mention to me one other called A Great Bunch of Guys.
A Great Bunch of Guys. That's the one. We just disbanded now because of illness of all the members of the quartet, and we've been together for 44 years. I organized that in Parma High School because we were singing for a teacher's television program who was teaching music, and she was doing a Valentine's show, and I organized a quartet there, and we stayed together, and I sang with one man that I've always sung with, and the other two were two guys from other quartets that had broken up over the years. So we stayed together for 44 years here.
Okay.
Received an honor from the International Barbershop Society, a large plaque honoring us for our longevity, for doing all the work we did.
When did you start singing? I mean, did you always sing growing up?
I was singing from the time I was 3 years old. My mother she gave birth to me when she was 16 years old, and she was a Bobby Soxer in her age, 1923, 25, and she loved music. She had a Victrola, and she'd buy the records. She'd sing, and I learned the song with her, and as soon as I learned the melody, she'd put down harmony to it. So I had harmony in my heart all the time I was growing up. Never stopped singing.
And you love music and singing and doing art projects.
Absolutely.
And do you have any
So
other...
I'm a part of the arts all the way through.
Did you have any other hobbies besides those? I mean, those would keep anybody busy.
Well, photography was another one that I did, and I was here in the Cleveland area. I was on the judging board for judging slides from different clubs who took different slides. I was a judge on that.
Okay.
So that was one thing I did. Let's see, hobbies. You know, I could be so much. Right now at BW, because of my eyesight is so poor, I can't do it now. But I was teaching in a group over here at BW College called the Institute for Learning in Retirement, and I was teaching basically the art chess for older women who wanted to have a chance at painting again and drawing and doing different things. So I did that. Of course, I've always, anytime I got a chance to do any kind of traveling, I did that. Donna sent me to China, Canton, China, with one of our other members of her staff, and then down to Hong Kong, Singapore, Jakarta, and then over to Bali, Australia, New Zealand.
Okay.
Then I took the time to go up to Guadalcanal to visit the place where we lost our soldiers, and over to Fiji, and I've gone to Hawaii. I've run about 14, 50 trips to Hawaii, because while I was teaching at Parma, I won a Master Teacher Award, which gave me a half-year sabbatical leave, and which paid for my retirement and my pay, plus $5,000. And I went and studied arts at Hawaii and Alaska.
Okay.
So I did that, and I went out and gave talks on those. showing slides of Alaska and Hawaii. So again, my life was full with that.
Sure. And when was that mostly when you were doing the photography and traveling? How long ago was that?
Oh, the photography kept going all along over here. I'm in trouble in the basement because I got probably 50,000 slides I don't know what to do with. People aren't using that technique anymore to show slides. And it's killing me to know that nobody else wants the slides anymore. They don't use that technique to, they have the modern techniques for pushing something up they want to know about Hawaii. It pops up on their iPad or something. So it's much different now.
And
And I taught photography at the high school while I was doing television there. So I got a bunch of 35 millimeter cameras that I could loan out to the kids to go out and shoot. And I would give them an assignment what I would want, is so that they didn't do just a normal stand-up person in a picture with a lot of waste material on the side. Show me a picture with you and a dog jumping.
sure.
See if you can do that.
An interesting
Things like that.
composition. Sure.
Yeah, give me something different.
Exactly. You did mention quite a bit. And I guess the big question and the reason I originally wanted to try and reach you all these years is, what's keeping you busy these days besides most of what we talked about today?
Well, right now, what's keeping me busy is staying healthy. I'm just now contacting the Veterans Administration because my vision is going to be, they're probably in the next month here going to pronounce me legally blind. And they'll give me a chance for them to come into my house to do some of the work that I can't do anymore. 95 years it has been full and wonderful, and I loved every moment of it.
And and you did mention 95 years, and I was just going to ask about your family a little bit. You and your wife are celebrating 63 years of marriage.
Yes, we are.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And obviously,
And
63 years is quite a long time.
yeah, we got a great family. Our daughter has won some honors from the state. She's a science teacher. She's head of a program called STEM, Science, Technology, Education, Art, and Mathematics. She's got some nice awards from the state, named #1 teacher.
Okay.
My son is down in Savannah, Georgia, selling semi-trucks and training kids to work in the port business. So I'm real happy with grandchildren. I'm real happy with my children.
Okay. And in the previous interview you gave with the World War II service, you said you have 2 children, Laura and David.
Yes.
Okay. And then your
Yes.
wife is Barbara?
Barbara.
Barbara.
Yes.
Okay. And
she's basically a librarian.
a librarian. Okay. And she was
Yeah.
along. And she was along for everything as far as some of the travel you
I
did
took
and
her on.
everything.
I took her on everything I could. I didn't take her overseas because she had a job. She was working while I was doing that with Donna.
Okay.
So people will say, "How do you folks live that long together?" And her quick answer is, "Well, he was gone away a lot, so we got along."
Sure. And another thing too is, 63 years of marriage. This is something I would ask anybody if it was married 63 years. Do you have any advice or any information for any young folks out there?
I tell the men to tell your wife you love her. Tell your wife you love her. Rub her back in the morning when you wake up, and let her know that you love her. And then do most of the listening.
Exactly. And I did mention to you in the phone call just before this interview, my grandmother, who I used to watch your show with, her next door neighbors just celebrated their wedding anniversary, and I was over there asking them. I was like, "So you guys have been married 60 plus years?" And I was like, "What secrets do you have?" And Larry, her husband, said, "Saying yes, dear, a lot."
Saying what?
Yes, dear.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And then
That's good, too.
And then his wife Bernice
Yeah.
said, "Why don't you say that more often then?" And they're great fun. They're great. And then
Oh yeah, you have your little pips that go on because you're still individuals. But the thing is, you forgive each other a lot for whatever might upset each other.
sure. And then just one of the last questions. I did originally contact you in the first phone call I ever gave to you. Is that you said that you want to put the 3 television series in the National Archive for future audiences.
I would like to do that, and I talked to Liz Rhodes, who was Donna's secretary. She runs a PBS station in Sacramento, New York, and I've asked her about it because when Donna died, I didn't know what they were going to do with the tapes. But the thing is, I sure would like somebody to work hard, because if those programs were available, but they were on tape and not on DVDs or anything, if I could get that somehow into some source where people could punch their iPad or something and pick the programs up and use them, I'd be so happy about that. We want to try and find a way to get it, because those programs are just too good for 15 little minutes for kids to view it and say, hey, I want to do that,
And I mean, a 15-minute art project's not a bad rainy day situation either. So, but I mean, plus 3 series of 32 episodes each. I mean, that's a good amount of television.
That's a good, 96 shows,
And you did say that you were talking with the lawyers and everything about trying to do an open distribution, so treat it like a printed work or a book and try to get it out there to the public.
Yeah, I sure would like to do that. I got an active daughter, but she's pretty busy with her projects, but we'll see if we can get that done somehow.
Sure. And we're winding down here, Dan, but one of the last questions I had for you is, what do you want to say to all the people, the parents and the children who grew up watching your programs, and to those that will hopefully discover them someday?
Keep trying. Don't give up on yourself. Keep trying. Don't consider a failure a failure. A failure is only a step to success. You just find out what doesn't work, take the next step. The next one's going to be a success. And your failures are only steps to to succeeding and giving you happiness in your accomplishments. And be sincere, be honest, be nice to each other, be kind to each other. Oh, okay.
All right.
And will I get a copy or a chance to see what you put together?
I was going to say one of the things I was going to say is after I get everything together and after my editor gets back, I'll get this compiled over the next week and get the interview written up, and hopefully it'll be in the next issue of our arts newspaper here. And if it does, I'll be sure to send you a copy.
Okay. All right.
All right, Dan.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate everything. I appreciate you talking to me, and I hope you have a good Father's Day tomorrow.
Thank you.
And give the best to your wife.
Okay, you bet.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.